And let me move this. All right, well, thanks for having me. As Justin indicated, been married for 43 years. I only have 2 children, but 11 grandchildren. My daughter, since she was a little girl, used to tell me on a regular basis that, that she wasn't real happy with the size of our family, and that when she grew up, she was going to have a lot of kids. And, I just kind of dismissed it as what little girls say. And sure enough, she's 2 months away from giving birth to her 8th child. She's, I like to refer to as a weirdo or a hippie, and she's just done a great job. And and I often get asked, to remember all their names, and I do remember all their names, but I couldn't tell you probably half of them how old they are. Rough, I can get the idea, in the vicinity, but anyway, so I started Syn-Mar Associates back in 1995, and prior to that, I worked for a couple of local firms, appraisal firms, and I've been through sort of 5 economic downturns, and obviously things are a little bit tough for people right now. Those of us that are in the commercial real estate business. A financial advisor that we work with periodically mentioned the other day that, while the Fed didn't succeed in necessarily killing inflation to any great degree, they have succeeded in killing the commercial real estate business. So whether that's your experience or not, I don't know. But when I started in 1995, several people told me that I shouldn't start an appraisal firm at that point because we were still dealing with the residual effects of the recession. And they were trying to encourage me, to be careful because demand for appraisal wasn't that great. The market was still soft, and there wasn't a lot of activity. I also read something at that point in time that said, if everyone's telling you not to do something, maybe that's a good time to do it because you won't have any competition. So I was crazy enough to start it. And then I think it was later in that fall that we were engaged to do an industrial building appraisal in Lake Forest in South Orange County. And it was about a 10,000 square foot industrial building that was in escrow for $40 a square foot. And subsequently, within a span of 3 months, we were asked to appraise 3 additional buildings in that market, all similar in size. And the second property was in escrow at $45 a square foot, the third at $58, and the fourth one at $65, all in a 3-month span, which represented about a 44% increase in value, which we thought was crazy. We're like, oh my God, the market's just out of control. And it proceeded to really sort of take off from that point. And if only we had a crystal ball, we could go back and a crystal ball, a time machine, go back and take advantage of the opportunities that the market was presenting at the time. Since that time, I've gone through. There was a kind of a downturn in 2000, 2020, 2001, with just kind of the fallout from Y2K and the drop off in computer and tech, purchasing as people were ramping up and anticipating this potential disaster of the computers not being able to roll over the date. And so that was a bit of a downturn. And then we had the Great Recession in 2009, which was a rough one as well. Then we have had the pandemic, and now we have the current economic downturn that has yet to play out as to whether we're going to have a recession or not. During that time, a lot has changed in the market. I mean, the first year that I was in the appraisal business, I was filling out appraisals on a form with a pencil. And now we have a lot of technology. We have a lot of data. We have social media. We have a lot of things that are influencing us. And one of the things that I believe has happened, and many of you probably would agree, or at least are experiencing it, is this kind of breakdown in interpersonal interaction. If you've tried to call your bank recently and kind of work out an issue, you'll be sort of stuck in the automated artificial intelligent voicemail system, and it takes a lot of effort to actually speak to a real person. So as that has occurred, and especially with younger people, there's a tendency not to be as comfortable with interpersonal interaction. But as the market changes and as things evolve, I think that's one of the tricks that we can employ going forward, especially if some of you as brokers came into the market after 2011, 2012, you had a relatively good market, and so this might be your first downturn, and you're experiencing, okay, now what, what am I supposed to do? It's like, the deals aren't just lining up and falling into place like they used to. So I think there's an opportunity here to develop some new skills, and one of those is this idea of developing a relationship with an appraiser. Now, and collaboration, I'll get into kind of breaking that down a little bit as far as what that looks like, because there are some limitations to what appraisers can do, but nonetheless, as we have developed relationships with various brokers and interacted with them, we've started to realize that there, or at least it seems to us, that there's a benefit. When I say us, I mean my team. That there's a benefit that's accruing to these brokers as we move through the process of interacting, over time. So let's let me go to the first slide here. Okay, so first of all, collaboration, just to define it, individuals pooling their knowledge and skills and resources, and efforts to achieve a common goal and desired outcome. So the question is, do brokers and appraisers really have anything in common? And in my opinion, we do, because of specifically the fundamental thing that we each do, which is we solve problems. So you have a prospective buyer, tenant, seller. They want to sell their building. They want to buy a building. So they have a problem, and your role is to solve that problem. As appraisers, when somebody comes to us and says, "Hey, I've got a situation here," or even just a bank comes to us and says, "We need you to provide an appraisal of a property because we need to know the value," that's the problem that we're solving. And the other thing that I think we have in common is that we're really intended to serve the public interest. In one case, you're serving the best interest of your client, and as far as appraisers are concerned, they're one of their primary mandates is to serve the public trust. In other words, to support the idea that and behave in such a way that the public can trust the appraisers, the appraisal industry, as well as the work that we do on behalf of local lenders, or the IRS, as an example, or attorneys, et cetera. So here's the idea that it could consider for you to think about as a result of this little time we have together, is to consider developing a relationship with an appraiser to improve your problem solving skills and to better serve the interests of your clients. Now, overlapping goals, making a friend with an appraiser. So this idea was presented to me several years ago. Some of you may know Doug Earnhardt with Lean Associates. He and I are good friends, and we've been investors together on industrial property out out in the Inland Empire. And he told me one day, when he called me, the first time that he ever reached out to me, he said, hey, I've been watching you. I've been the broker on some deals that you've done appraisals on, and and I like your style. I like your approach, your integrity. And he said, so I maintain a list of resources for when a client, after I sell the client, sell the building to the client or get the client into the space. He said, my relationship ideally continues over a lifetime. And so I expect at some point they're going to call me for a resource that I'm going to be their first thought. If they need somebody to fix their HVAC, they need a painter, they need a roll-up door specialist, repair guy. And so he said, I also want to have an appraiser on my list because I want to be able to refer somebody to them that is going to, that I know is going to know how to do the job, and that is also not going to make me look bad. And so that's the idea here, is that you consider putting an appraiser, in a sense, into your problem solving toolbox. So, how would that work? Well, this is going to be a list of things or of reasons that brokers have contacted me. And incidentally, the reason that we started putting ourselves out to the brokerage community back in 2018, 2019, is because we thought about the relationship between appraisers and brokers is typically one-sided. So the appraiser contacts the broker, asks to confirm a sale, to ask for lease comps, ask for information regarding the market. The appraiser gets what he needs and he hangs up, and then the broker never hears from him again. So we were looking for a way that we could give back to the brokerage community for all the help that they provide us. So in that process, and that's literally what I do, y'all are familiar with cold calling. You do it yourselves on a regular basis. I don't necessarily cold call brokers, but if one of my appraisers has an interaction with a broker that we don't know, and that broker provides us with information, I then will typically follow up with a call that says, hey, if there's anything we can ever do for you. If there's, if you ever have a question about appraisal, you just need, help in any way, call us and we'll see if there's something that we can't do for you in return. So one of the reasons that brokers now contact us is just to get ahead of unique value or use issues. An example, the most recent example, is a broker had a client death. There's a death. The estate is processing the real estate, needed to sell some of the assets. And one of those properties was a multi-tenant industrial property underneath a freeway overpass in downtown Los Angeles. So some of you may not know, but Caltrans will or has, over the years, leased the airspace rights, and then in some cases people have built multi-tenant industrial buildings. Well, in this case, that lease was coming due in about 12 years. They wanted to sell the property, but he just didn't know how to, was it even real estate or was it something else? And so I was able to help him, explain to him how we would look at that. They had a resource internally that could do some, Excel spreadsheet work, create a cash flow. And so I gave him some parameters. Once they had put it together, they sent it to me. I looked it over and I told them, yeah, you're on the right track. The only thing that you need to do is just determine a reasonable rate of return on the cash flow, and essentially float it out there and see if you can get anybody to buy off on it. And so he was off and running. Another reason I get calls periodically is just, a broker's looking for some talking points for disputing an appraisal done by somebody else. There's a fine line for doing this kind of thing, particularly if they don't actually have a copy of the appraisal. but sometimes it's really just basic stuff that I can give him, that he can maybe go back and just bring, or she can bring up and see if they're covering all the bases, based on the information that is being provided to me. Another reason is just list price assistance in unfamiliar markets. I had a broker recently called. He had a long-term client that had a piece of vacant land in another area of Southern California that he wasn't familiar with. He wanted to talk about whether appraisals we'd done in the area and what land values look like, and he compared that to what he was assuming, and it gave him some guidance in terms of what he was trying to accomplish. Other times we've actually been hired by brokerage firms to do specific analysis that we put, that they ultimately end up inserting into their marketing brochures as support for their idea of listing price. And then a big thing that we seem to be a good resource for, and this is sort of, hey, what's in it for me? We probably get 2 or 3 referrals a week from brokers who are referring a client, typically a former client, that has some issue. For example, somebody might say, "Hey, Dad, my father just passed. I'm processing the estate. My attorney has told me that I need an appraisal based on the date of death. Can you help me?" And we do a lot of that type of work. Partnership dissolution, divorce, even assistance with the asking price. I always kind of smile when somebody calls and says, so-and-so referred me. I want to get an appraisal so we can establish the asking price to put it out on the market. And I think, I wonder why the broker referred them. Probably because the property owner thinks their property is worth more than it is. So they want me to be the bearer of bad news instead of them. Now, with respect to estate planning and IRS tax reporting, something that is helpful to be aware of. They're saying that over the next 5 to 10 years, there's going to be the greatest transfer of intergenerational wealth, something to the tune of $30 to $60 trillion based on recent news reports that I've seen. Obviously this is the baby boomer transition, as they began to age and die off and hand over their wealth. We know that baby boomers have been big fans of owning property. So there's going to be a lot of property that's in play, and to me it seems like this represents an opportunity for brokers in the sense of being involved with their clients going through this, some of whom will need to liquidate real estate, some of whom will just want to, just because they don't have the same value for property ownership. But the fact is that whenever this kind of thing happens, typically an appraisal is required, and we'd like to be the at least a consideration in that. Now, something else to be aware of: the Inflation Reduction Act that Biden signed into law last year included $79 billion in additional IRS funding over the next 10 years, of which $46 billion is allocated to enforcement, which is to say that they are anticipating this transfer of wealth and are looking specifically toward gearing up or ramping up so that they can make sure that every penny of tax is being paid. So it just it pays to have a resource or resources that if you're gonna refer a client, then you want to make sure that the person you're referring them to, the appraiser, knows what they're doing, and it doesn't end up they don't end up with a problem on their hands. Now, the other thing that there's there's some things that'd be good to know about a relationship, with an appraiser, and having an appraiser as a resource. Number one, appraisers are required to be an independent, impartial, objective, and competent. We cannot advocate for you, your client, or a value. Now, occasionally, I do run into this with, some of the broker relationships that I have, is that when it comes time, where they need an appraisal for themselves, I've had to manage the expectation that, that we would, maybe favor their particular cause. And so we have those conversations. The main point to make is that most appraisers are going to be able to have a friendly relationship, a friendship even. I mean, I do have brokers that we've become friends with over the years. It is possible to have a relationship like that and still remain independent, impartial, and objective. Now, the other thing that is good to know is, and I bring this, or I include this because sometimes when in fact, recently, I had a broker who referred a property owner to me that wanted to get appraisals to determine what the asking price would be. The broker admitted that because the market had so little activity, that he was looking forward to the assistance from the appraisal as well. At any rate, we went through and did our analysis, and then I contacted him. I said, hey, I just want to make sure that we're taking into account everything that we need to know. You as a broker have been far more active in this marketplace, so just make sure that we haven't missed anything. And I said, and so I know that you're counting on us to provide the value, but do you have any idea, any thoughts on the value? And he said, well, geez, I don't, aren't you supposed to be independent and impartial? And why are you asking me? And the reason that I was asking him is that, as I say here, the appraisal is an act or process of developing an opinion of value. And opinions are influenced by information and data from reliable sources. And one of those reliable sources, we consider to be knowledgeable brokers. So I explained that to him, and he understood, where I was coming from. And but at one point was confused as to whether I was going to be doing my own independent appraisal, or I was just looking for a number to throw something, to throw data at. So we cleared that up, and we were able to provide them with some useful information. And now the other thing to keep in mind is that appraisers are subject to confidentiality requirements and cannot share assignment results. Now, assignment results are defined as the appraiser's opinions or conclusions, not limited to value, that were developed when performing an appraisal assignment. So, for example, if I determined that the market appeal of the subject property being appraised is below average, that is an assignment result. Okay, so I can't share that kind of information with you. However, there are conditions in which I can, and I have actually had private party clients designate their broker as an intended user, especially when it comes to doing an appraisal for determining a reasonable list price. So that's a case in which, if we clarify, the parties to the appraisal going in, then we can have some conversations. And again, I find it to be helpful that for example, if I determine that the market appeal is below average, that I have at least an opportunity to discuss that with somebody who's active in the market and knows the subject property as well. Okay, an appraisal is retrospective, looking from the data value backwards. So in other words, we can't forecast or estimate a market value based on, let's say, based on a prospective buyer that you may already have a relationship with, who is very anxious to acquire a property, is willing perhaps to pay a higher value than the last sale, because they really need to get into a building. We can't take that kind of thing into consideration. Instead, we just have to look at what has happened historically. Now, back to the example I gave of the conversation with the broker who had referred us and was looking for our help in establishing an asking price. He did reveal after the fact that he set his asking price at 10% higher than our appraised value, based on a couple of factors that had to do with looking forward. Okay, another thing to be aware of is that the number of appraisers is declining, and so I would say that and the reason they're declining is that we're aging out. Over 50% of the licensed appraisers are, I believe, 55 years and older. Okay, so that may be advocating for you to make friends or develop a relationship with a younger appraiser. But some of us old timers are going to be around for at least another 10 years or so. But anyway, the fact that we're declining that is being supported by the Department of Labor. So they estimate there's 76,000 appraisers in the U.S., 12% of which are in California. They also estimate that the industry needs 6,800 new appraisers per year to enter the workforce to be able to replace retiring appraisers. Extrapolated to California, that means 830 something new appraisers every year. However, in California, from 2021 to 2022, we saw a 3.5% decline, and more is expected because of this current economic downturn. It's slower for appraisers, and there's some guys out there that will take this opportunity to retire. So all that to say that if this idea is compelling, the sooner the better. And then the last thing is that artificial intelligence will only be part of the answer. I don't believe AI is going to overtake the appraisal business, the valuation of property completely. I see AI as a potential tool that appraisers will be able to use to improve what they do or make what they do easier. But it's not going to be the answer. Okay, and then this is kind of a little bit of a bonus thing. If you're, this just has to do with interacting with an appraiser. Let's say on a deal, if an appraiser contacts you on a property you have in escrow and says, hey, I'm want to schedule the inspection and just want to get your feedback on the property. The specific things that we look for when we're talking to listing agents is the best comp or comps for the property, but not all the comps. I mean, sometimes a broker will tell me that they're going to send me comps, and what they've done is just basically downloaded about 30 or 40 sales from CoStar. And we can do that. We have access to the databases, CoStar, CompStack, and so forth. But if there's just something out there that influenced your marketing decision, that's what we want to know about, and don't necessarily assume that we will know about it. The other thing is just what we can't see, renovation, updating, and not only what they've done, but ideally what was spent. That's very helpful. What makes the property unique, and that sometimes is market specific. For example, a small building, under 15,000 feet that has dock eye loading, that's kind of unique, and sometimes that can be important, and is what is enhancing marketability, and sometimes it's just not a factor. But anyway, just that, and then another thing is just the association manager. Condo projects, planned development projects typically will have association assessments. It's just great to know, if we know what that that amount is and what it covers. You may not necessarily have that detail, and that's where the manager contact comes in. Another reason that we oftentimes have to contact the manager, association manager, is just try to determine the accurate parking ratio for a project, because sometimes that's a little harder to figure out than you would think. And then this is something that we're required to report in our appraisals: is the length of marketing, the marketing time, the time the property was exposed on the market, the asking price, any reductions, if it went into escrow and fell out, if there's any backup offers, etc. And then specifically, this is my chance to pitch Syn-Mar specifically. Why refer us? Experience, 35 plus years in the business. I think collectively with my team, my entire team, it's like over 100 years. 25 billion evaluations. I do need to update that. I think we're up to 30 now. We understand IRS requirements. We have quite a few resources to stay on top of that, understand exactly what they're looking for and what we need to do under certain circumstances. And not every IRS tax reporting appraisal needs to be the same kind of appraisal. There's variations and options that can affect price and timing and so forth. For us, it's more than just theory. Several of us have owned investment property during recessions, and I throw that in because that's a real test of your resilience and fortitude with regard to investments. I got into I didn't own anything before 2007, or excuse me, before 2005, but spent a few years acquiring property. And I remember at the same time there were a lot of books that were out about how you could buy something for $1 down and and make money investing in real estate. Whoops, sorry about that. I think I just killed the feed. Hang on. Let me escape out of this and go back. Okay, there we go. That's a rookie move right there. Anyway, those books, they talked about the glories of owning investment property, how to make everybody rich, and none of them had a chapter on what happens in an economic downturn. And I could have written that chapter several times over after about 2011. And we enjoy helping people. Our tagline is one less thing to worry about. Frequently, I get a call from somebody who's overwhelmed. Their father, mother have died. They're now having to process or deal with the trust. They're dealing with an attorney, a CPA. They're being told that all these things they've got to do, and and a lot of times you can hear the exasperation in their voice, and it's just real easy for us to say, hey, look, I get it. You need an appraisal. We know, I think we understand what you need. Let me just give you one less thing to worry about. And most of the time, we'll just offer to call the CPA or the attorney who's advising them, and just make sure that we understand exactly what the situation is, rather than putting that person or making that person be the go-between. And then we won't make you look bad. We understand you've referred somebody. I mean, I think of it like what Doug said. It's you're referring us because you believe that we'll do the job correctly, that we know what we're doing, and that we won't do something that makes that client think you're a knucklehead for referring us. So I think that's it. If that's the end of my presentation. So if you have any questions, I'm ready.
That was great. Thank you, Stephen. Does anybody have any questions? If you do, you can either type it in the chat or you can raise your hand. I was going to ask about some of the technology coming down the pipeline, and you kind of alluded to it at the end. Is there any other pieces of technology that you think will affect how appraisals are done in the next 5 or 10 years?
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about I don't know if there's a lot of talk, but I perk up when I hear people talk about remote property inspections through the use of drones. That is something that we have. Let me stop sharing here and kind of get. Okay, that's something that we actually experimented with back in 2008, 2009. In a sense, we would send a trainee to the property, and then we would FaceTime with them or Zoom with them while they were at the site, and we would guide their inspection and have them zero in on things that we saw that looked interesting or looked problematic. And that only lasted about 3 months. And when the lenders found out, they were like, "No, you can't. You got to do it the old school way." And so that brings up the reality that because many appraisers are older, they don't tend to be as tech savvy, and so they're a bit resistant to certain things. But essentially, I think in the area of property inspections, that's where we're gonna maybe see, and then. Gosh, Justin, you kind of caught me off guard. I haven't thought about that in a while. So that's probably the main thing, I would think.
Okay, great. Does anybody else have a question? Artie said, thank you for an informative session.
You're welcome.
Lots of other positive comments came my way during the presentation, the chat. So I just want to thank you, Stephen. I really appreciate it. I want to encourage everybody to use Stephen as a resource. He's really good at what he does. His team is super knowledgeable. They're very great at communicating. They'll, hold your hand through every step of the way if you need it. And like you said, they'll make you look good. So thank you so much, Stephen. If you're okay with it, we will have this presentation posted on YouTube. And if you'd like to share your slides, we can circulate that to everybody who signed up for the webinar as well.
Yep. Okay. I'll get that to you.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate all your support of our chapter and being a resource for all of us. So thank you. And I'll let you guys all go. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.